Okay, guys. Hey, how's it going? TOK week 3, the second 9 weeks. We're in the middle of our religion unit here, for better or worse. All right. Last week we talked a little bit about so last week you guys went back and watched the comparative mythology presentations by your classmates. I was reading some of the discussion around those, and kind of what you guys took away from it. A lot of you guys did a really good job. So I don't have a whole lot of complaints. As you probably saw in the English video, this week is a really crazy week. The IB authorization visit is this week. Mannix and I are both just absolutely swamped. I'm going to try to, though, very late at night, catch up on grades this week, because I am behind on grades like you wouldn't believe. It's been a crazy 9 weeks for me so far. Lots going on in my house, lots going on with my kids. Just trying to figure out how to juggle all this and be effective is a challenge, as I'm sure you guys are trying to figure out how to juggle a bunch of stuff in your lives as well. But I'm going to try and catch up on grades this week, and we're going to do our best to kind of get that caught up. I'm going to go back and backfill in some stuff on some discussions where I've read some things and thought things, but just haven't found time to put in the stuff yet. Couple of things before we get into theology and religious development. I re-sent out manage back invites. Remember, that's where you're going to be uploading your CAS and your TOK stuff and your extended essay stuff. We're going to talk about that a bit more after Thanksgiving. I'm going to try and wrap religions up before we get to the end of Thanksgiving, so that way after Thanksgiving, from Thanksgiving on until like February, we're just done with the class and it's just working on the assessment stuff for the course and your extended essay, and your presentations and all of that. So I know that some of you are probably stressing that stuff. Don't worry, it's coming. All right, I've got tons of time baked in. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna handhold you guys through so much of that, for your benefit. So don't stress it out so much yet. Okay. So let's talk today a little bit about how religions develop. I'm a little bit frustrated with this one because all of my religious texts are at school, and whenever I like to do this particular section, I typically bring in like a giant stack of like religious books to kind of explain each of these phases, and so that way you guys can flip through them and kind of see them and see how they are different and stuff. But we're going to do our best. So how do you get a religion? Right? This is an important question if you're going to talk about religions and religious knowledge systems and things like that. It's like what is a religion versus something like a cult, right? Because you hear people say like the only difference between a religion and a cult is a few hundred years. And to some degree that's true, but I think that also undersells the way that religions develop as complex systems in and of themselves. There's a big difference between like the Catholic Church or Shia Islam and the Jonestown cult, right? Like those are just very, very different things. So how do you get to a religion? Well, all religions kind of start with the same place that all cults do, and they all of them start with a revelation. Now, uh, the revelatory experience is what makes a religion unique, as opposed to something like the sciences, right? The sciences are all about observation and then recording of data and then analyzing that like data to then draw conclusions, and that's how they generate knowledge. That's how they know things, right? The arts is about generating art and then involving in a dialogue between the artist and the audience and the society, right? It's that triangle again. Remember, the art and the audience and the artist are over here, and then the triangle, and then we generate knowledge that way, right? Religion starts with revelation, with a truth given from some supernatural element, usually God, right? Given through supernatural means to an individual, right? And then that individual spreads that truth to other people. So this is Moses in the burning bush, and then the Ten Commandments, right? Right. God gives Moses a truth. Moses gives that truth to other people, right? This is Gautama, the first Buddha, and the Bodhi tree, where he goes to meditate under the like Bodhi tree, and then the other people who are there meditating as well won't drink the milk, and he drinks the milk, and then he has a supernatural revelation. Now, Buddhists don't believe in a god necessarily, but he still is revealed a truth supernaturally, right? It is a truth that is revealed to him that he then goes and carries out to other people. Muhammad is given the truth of God, if I'm not mistaken, in the cave through angels. Angels come to Muhammad and they reveal the final truth to the prophet in the cave, which he then goes out and gives to other people. Jesus gets it. I mean, God talks to Jesus out of the sky. He gets it in the Garden of Gethsemane. God is revealing truth to Jesus, and that one's a weird relationship because Jesus is also supposed to be God, but they have conversations. I don't know. It's really interesting. The Rishi and the Veda. Rishi are Hindu holy people, and then priests. And what is really interesting about Hinduism and the Vedas is that the Vedas are kind of always evolving. They're kind of like there are these like classic Vedas, but their holy text is kind of like the Rishis are still expanding the Vedas, right? Joseph Smith, who founded the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is given the golden tablets on top of a hill in like New England. L. Ron Hubbard goes in for a dental procedure and has this near-death experience, which is like revelatory to him of these universal truths of like the entire nature of the universe and the galaxy, which he then turns into Dianetics and Scientology. The Apostle Paul, who is in many ways almost as responsible for Protestant Christianity as Jesus is, at least in the way that the Protestant Church is developed and like operates. He gets knocked off his donkey and struck blind. Like these are revelations. These are God giving something to an individual who then tells the truth to other people, and that's always the beginning point of a religion, right? But then there's a second step, and this is where things start to change. Even cults have this revelatory experience, right? But then for these long-standing religions, right, what ends up happening is that this revelation then emerges as a holy text, right? And so these are things like the Gospels. These are things like the Quran. Scientology has the HCOBs, which are the L. Ron Hubbard communications of something. I forget exactly what it stands for. The Vedas, the Book of Mormon, are the revelations of John Smith. And these are all based around revelations from the supernatural and the events in the history that surround those revelations. They're almost always recorded secondhand. The Gospels that we have of the New Testament and of Jesus were written about 150 to 300 years after the death of Jesus. The Old Testament, it looks like, was written like maybe 1,000 years. Well, maybe not 1,000. I think it's like 600 to 1,000 years after the events. It's kind of sketchy with the Old Testament. The Quran was transcribed. From my understanding, the Prophet did not write the Quran himself. Somebody correct me if listen. Islam is one of my areas in the religious knowledge system that I am working on developing my knowledge in, but it is not as robust as I would like it to be. So I don't ever want to speak as an authority on Islam because I'm not 100%. So if anybody has clarification, feel free to offer it to me. But I'm pretty sure that the Quran was written secondhand by Muhammad's followers, not by the Prophet himself. They are the Prophet's words, but they are the Prophet's words transcribed, just like the Gospels are the words of Jesus, but the words of Jesus is transcribed by his followers after the fact, right? Now, we do get some that are firsthand, like the Book of Mormon is a lot of firsthand because Joseph Smith was literate, and it's a relatively modern religion, and he wrote a good chunk of the Book of Mormon. HCOB, L. Ron Hubbard wrote all of those, and that one's a bit tricky, right? And that's why it's almost always recorded secondhand. But like the dharmas of the Buddha were all secondhand, so on, and then so forth. And these holy texts, it's important to note that they are supposed to be records. All right, these are records of the words spoken or of the events. They are not they typically do not give opinions on the beliefs or on the statements themselves, right? It's not like, Matthew says, and then Jesus said to the rich young ruler, give all of your possessions to the poor, pick up your cross and follow after me, which was a crazy thing to say because why would a rich young person do that, right? There's no commentary section. It's just Jesus said to the rich young ruler, give all of your possessions to the poor, take up your cross and follow after me, right? So the holy text is meant to be a record, almost like a history, but a history solely for the believers of that faith. All right. The commentary comes later, and the commentary is really the first. It's the first stage of development, and this is where people outside of outside of the person given the revelation, and then usually outside of the people that followed the person giving the revelation, and they are giving commentary on the holy text. They are looking for themes and ideas that are in this text that are logically consistent with each other, right? So, how does this holy text lead us to treat or think about the poor? What does it say about health? What does it say about the nature of God? And so these are commentaries, and they are ways of doing what is called systematic theology. And systematic theology is an attempt to find overarching trend and themes and ideas in the holy text itself. And the reason why this is important is that the revelation doesn't come to everyone. The revelation was given to John Smith, not to Brigham Young. It was given to Moses, not to Aaron. And so, because the followers of the religion do not have the experience of the revelation themselves, they have to try and rely on the holy text to come to terms with the totality of what the belief system is and what it entails. Then once they figure out what those beliefs are, those themes and those ideas that emerge as they give commentary on the holy text itself, they develop dogma and doctrine. All right, and dogma and doctrine are basically rules and practices that the religion establishes as truth. And these are things like communion in the Christian church. There are things like praying or daily prayer in the Muslim faith. There are things like meditation in the Buddhist faith. These are practices. These are things like the missionary requirement in the Mormon church. These are doctrines. These are rules that are developed out of the holy text that then believers are supposed to follow, right? But these rules are really about religious practice. It is about how to be a Christian. Doing these things is how you be a Christian. You go to church, you take communion, you read the Bible, so on, and so you say prayers, so on and so forth. How do you be a Muslim? You avoid stuff that are like haram. You have to dress modestly. You have to pray daily. What does it mean to be a follower of this faith? All right, we're not to the how do you live your life yet. We're just in the how do you practice this faith section. And that's what the dogma and the doctrine are. And some religions have a lot of dogma and a lot of doctrine. Some have very little dogma and doctrine. Just like some have a lot of this commentary. Like, man, this cat named Thomas Aquinas did a systematic theology for the Catholic Church a long time ago, and it's something like 5,000 pages long, and he didn't even finish. Right? Like some of these cats, I mean, like some of these religions have a ton of stuff. Some of them have very little commentary. Just kind of depends on the faith. And then dogma and doctrine, religious practice, what does it mean to be like, how do I practice this religion that I believe in, right? Then once we get the dogma and the doctrine done, then we can combine that with that commentary to get what we call applied theology. And applied theology is how do we take these practices of being a religious person in this religion and use that to make sense of our personal lives and how we interact with the world. How does this inform my understanding of my existence? How can I apply these religious beliefs to my understanding of self? And that's applied theology. So, like, it's like, how does my religion affect what I think about the idea of love? How does it affect my understanding of what marriage means? How does it understand, how does it inform my ideas of what I should eat, or how I should act, or how I should like treat others? Those are the applied theological aspects. And on some levels, this is like very, very surface level, right? Like do good things, be nice, whatever, right? But then this also gets very, very big minded as well, right? Like, Buddhists and like Hindus both are like all vegetarians. They refuse, and Buddhists refuse to do anything that could harm any living thing because they believe in like reincarnation, which means that they believe in the equitability of all souls. They believe that everything that is alive, plants, animals, insects, everything has a soul, and those souls are all equitable. So to do harm to like an ant is to do harm to like a person. And so this applied theology, then how do I, as a believer in this religion, what does it mean for how I live and for how I think about the nature of my existence? All right, and then that gets us to the final phase, which is practical theology, which is how does this faith, all right, how does this religion, how does this faith system, how does this belief interact with the rest of the world that is not a part of that faith and that belief? So, how does Christianity, right, interface with the rest of the non-Christian world? How does it interface with other belief systems? How does Islam interact with the world? Right? Like if we're supposed to avoid haram and if we're supposed to dress modestly, what do we do if we live in a secular society where those things are not happening or the majority of like people are not following those like practices? Do we have a moral obligation to encourage them to do so because we think that it's what God wants? And then what should we use to try and persuade people of that? And this is where things start to get really tricky, right? Which is how does this belief system interact with the rest of the world? Now, most of these things are developed over hundreds and hundreds of years, right? You don't go from holy text to practical theology in a generation. That's not how this happens. Even the most quickly developing religions, things like Mormonism, I mean, you're still talking uh, almost 200 years to where they're just now starting to get to the practical theology side of things. And so, because, like for a long time, Mormonism just isolated itself in like Utah and just worried about, this and then this. And they're only just now starting to worry about practical theology. So this is kind of the stages of religious development and religious thought in any given religious knowledge system, right? So any given religion kind of follows this same arc of evolution here. All right. So yeah. Yeah. So that's that. I know that's kind of a lot of big terminology here. I tried to make it as plain as I could. Um, it's hard for me to know where the limits of having these conversations are and talking about this without getting overly technical or overly specific. So, some of you know this, some of you don't, but I started out college as a religion major. Um, I've studied religions a lot. I studied Christianity from Greek and Hebrew texts whenever I was in fifth grade. Um, I have friends of mine that are theologians that went to Yale Divinity School. Um, it's one of those things that I have a deep interest in. And so it's hard for me to like stay out of the weeds in some of this, like it's hard for me to avoid getting overly specific or focusing too much on one specific belief system or like mode of like development, because these are just overarching trends. Each religion is going to have smaller discrete phases in there that are unique to them. Christianity did not develop the same as Islam. Islam came much later, and its founder had a much larger impact on its development as a faith than what Jesus did, because the development of Christianity as a religion didn't really happen until after Jesus was dead, as where Muhammad was present for much of the development of early Islam. Same thing with like Joseph Smith and like Mormonism. Scientology is literally L. Ron Hubbard's, like that's what he spent his entire life doing. So all of these religious knowledge systems have definite differences and things that make them unique and individual. But I do think that all major religions, especially ones that are still practiced, follow these general trends. Obviously, these trends do not apply to things like ancient Greek mythology, for instance. I don't think that ancient Greek mythology ever got to the practical theology phase. I do think that they got all the way up to the applied theology. I do think that, they got here probably. But those were different because those gods were not necessarily gods of virtue or righteousness. Those gods reflected humans. They were flawed gods. They did good things and they did bad things. Zeus was a good guy sometimes and helped people out, and sometimes he had sex with a horse. It was kind of a wash. You just didn't know. It isn't until we get to monotheism that we get what I like to call the dichotomous gods, where a god is good or bad, right? And then that kind of changes things, right? But I think that most of the major belief systems practiced today definitely do follow this kind of pattern here. And so I think that this is an effective way of trying to understand things. So your assignment this week, I'm asking you to do a religious development assignment. Bam, 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 bam. And what I want you to do for this religious development assignment is I want you to go do some research on a religion that you do not believe in, all right, and that your family does not practice. All right, let me say that. I want you to do a religion that you do not believe in and that your family does not practice, and I want you to give me a rundown, a write-up, a history of the development of that religion. And I'm not going to be overly prescriptive on how you do that. You want to do a PowerPoint presentation and take me through the various phases and what the revelation was and who the founders were and how the Holy Text was developed and what the Holy Text is, and then how it operates in the world today and how people practice it. Cool. Do that. You want to write an essay on it and give me some words on those same things and how the religion was founded and how people practice it and what its beliefs are and how it interfaces with the world. Cool. Do that. You want to make a video because that's easier for you? Cool. Do that. I don't care how you generate your knowledge and then display it. What I want you to focus on here is being pretty comprehensive with it. I want you to tell me, all right, and this is where it gets itemized, all right? Where's the revelation? What was the first revelation that started off the whole religion? All right? 2, what's the holy text? Is there a holy text? Probably yes, but there are a couple of religions that don't actually. But is there a like holy text? What is it? All right. Who wrote it? Where did it come from? Right. If I were doing the Bible, I might talk about the Old Testament versus the New Testament and how those things are different and kind of where they came from. Right. Three, what are some of the major beliefs of this religion that come out of this holy text, right? What do these people believe? What did this revelation eventually end up looking like as a like release system? And then four, what are some of the religious practices of this faith, right? So if you're doing Christianity, you got to talk about communion, you got to talk about prayer, you got to talk about church and church services. And if you're going to do orthodoxy or like Catholicism, you got to talk about incense and all that kind of stuff. If you're doing Islam, you got to talk about praying. You got to talk about why they face a certain direction when they pray. You got to talk about the pilgrimage. You got to talk about haram. You got to talk about all that stuff. If you're doing Buddhism, right, you got to talk about diet. You got to talk about the role of the monastic life. You got to talk about the role of meditation and mindfulness. Especially, man, because, man, you get into Buddhism and it gets deep real quick because there's like 5,000 different sects of Buddhism. You want to talk, but give me a rundown of how these people practice what they believe, and then the last one is, how does this religion interface with the rest of the world, right? How does it see itself interacting with the rest of the world? What is its role? And with that last one, I don't want you to give me a 9,000 page history of how the religion has interacted with the world. What I'm looking for is like, do they feel the need to convert people to their religion? Do they take an active role in their communities, or do they kind of stay alone by themselves? Right? How do they interact with the world at large? All right. Yeah, and then again, however you want to present that information once you find it, go for it. I'm not going to tell you which religion to do. Pick one that you want to know more about. Pick a religion that you don't know a lot about now that you would like to know more about. There are 7 billion people in the world. Over 50% of them do not practice an Abrahamic religion, which is, Abrahamic religions are Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Seventh-day Adventist. All right, those are the Abrahamic religions. The majority of the world does not practice them. All right, the majority of the world lives in India and China, and well, just in like Asia. You can draw a circle around the eastern part of Asia, and that's where the majority of people in the world live. Less than 2% of the people in that circle practice an Abrahamic religion. Most of the Western world does. So maybe you want to go learn about them. Maybe you want to go learn about some, religion that was really prominent but is not very prominent anymore. There are some of those that are also very, very interesting. Where do they go? What happened to them? Interesting to learn about, right? Maybe you want to learn, like, take some time, go out, do some discovery. All right, I want you to make this interesting for like yourself. All right, yeah, and that's it for this week. I'm going to be around as much as I can. As I said, in English, this is the IB reauthorization week. Got a lot going on with that. But if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Hit me up. I'll be glad to do my best to answer them. Go out and trick or treat this week if you can. And if your neighborhood is doing it, it's going to be like, look, I never have a problem with high school kids coming to my house to like trick or treat. But I think it's a little bit creepy whenever people that are old enough to drink come to my house to trick or treat. That seems a little weird to me. So I think you're nearing the end of where you guys can get away with it. So go out and do it while you can. All right, go out and get into it. All right. Yeah, that's all I got. It's 2:30 in the morning now. I've been recording videos for like 4 hours. So I think I'm going to try and go get some sleep before I have to wake up in 4 hours to go take my daughter to school. Have a great one, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.